Yacht she Shaunicey Begay Yanishya, Belegana Nishle, Deshini Bashin, Belegana Dasche, Do Belegana Dashanele, Page, Arizona, Dishigan. Hello, my name is Shaunicey Begay and I am from Page, Arizona. I am a sophomore honor student majoring in law with a minor in American Indian Studies. Growing up near the Navajo Reservation, I would visit my grandma in Coppermine, which is 20 minutes away from my hometown. I did not live in a traditional Navajo environment, and at a younger age, I lacked cultural awareness and understanding. When I entered middle school, I began to grow in my understanding of cultural traditions and knowledge. This is when I also began to understand that there isn't just one Native American experience and background, and this is what makes us unique. Living on the reservation, in urban cities, and learning their stories from our relatives is what brings communities together. The power of my voice, by sharing stories of my experiences, has shaped me into the person I am today, a dedicated student who strives academically, provides resources and access to youth, and makes a difference in my community. Actively involved and engaged in each class, meeting, and event, I continue to obtain knowledge that I can apply to Indigenous communities. My service learning journey, where I built a sense of relationship, community, and power, started in Native SOAR, Student Outreach, Access, and Resiliency. Here, I began to make an impact for Indigenous students who are historically underserved as they prepare for tribal college, community college, university, or as they pursue their dreams of becoming a tattoo artist, construction worker, or electrician. Enrolling in Native SOAR, reading academic articles by Indigenous authors, and responding to their perspectives through an Indigenous lens opened my eyes. I've recognized the influence of Western culture on my learning and how it may affect the young students I mentor. In an Indigenous Peoples History of the United States, Roxanne Dunbar Otis defines settler colonialism as the founding of a state based on the ideology of white supremacy, a policy of genocide and land theft. European settlers forced themselves into Indigenous communities and claimed the unoccupied land where Indigenous tribes lived. Westward expansion moved Indigenous tribes west into limited areas referred to as reservations. Despite acts of war, trauma, assimilation by Christian values, exploitation through treaties, and the implementation of boarding schools, Indigenous people are still here, striving and fighting for equality, greater access, and opportunities. Ortiz identifies the act of resistance, stating, Indigenous nations and communities are societies formed by their resistance to colonialism, through which they have carried their practices and history. My act of resistance is gaining knowledge, learning more about my cultural history, and continuing on to the path of earning a law degree, focusing on Indian law and policy. Now, as I am exposed to a new environment and community while attending the University of Arizona, I have kept to myself and have had difficulty connecting to others. And beyond the asterisks, we learn that a sense of belonging occurs on a campus in which all students feel connected, as communities are brought together through similarities and differences from our lives. A sense of belonging is often hindered when students encounter acts of racism and discrimination, which are often present in predominantly white institutions. Indigenous students continue to encounter barriers, leaving institutions wondering how firm they are in being committed to providing a safe, welcoming, and learning environment. The current society we live in can be hard and scary, but talking about our experiences and building a close community forms acts of resistance and a fight for change. Viewing these changes through an Indigenous lens can help institutions serve Native American students. As I continue to learn from professors, articles, and Indigenous history, I'm reminded that my learning experience is different from others. The authors in Beyond the Asterisk emphasize that most of us have learned through a European lens when taught history, when learning from our teachers and from authors who are interpreting history. From a Western European lens, I failed to recognize that the way history has been taught often overrides Indigenous knowledge. Further, Dr. Brayboy pinpoints this in his Toward a Tribal Critical Race Theory in Education by stating, Tribal Crit emphasizes that colonization is endemic in society while also acknowledging the role played by racism. My Native SOAR journey incorporated 3 factors featured in Indigenous knowledge realized: a sense of relationship, community, and power. Sharing my experience with my mentees at the first peer mentoring session, I put myself in their shoes. I was able to build relationships with them regardless if they had similar or different cultural backgrounds. When preparing for each mentoring session, I was aware that many high schools lack resources and college preparation, but this is where community is built, through the sharing of resources, answering questions, and exploring students' interests. As I embark on my educational journey, I plan to participate in community events, internships in Indigenous law and policy, and eventually apply to law school. I will take the knowledge I have learned from Native SOAR with me when I return to my community. As my Native SOAR journey comes to an end, there continues to be a gap between access and resources provided to Indigenous students, often burdening them financially, academically, and mentally. This bridge of awareness is being brought to light, but institutions that serve Indigenous students are not fully upholding their commitment to providing equal opportunities for Indigenous students. Change begins within each person's desire and commitment to serving Indigenous students, supporting their success academically and as a community. We are paving the way for Indigenous students in post-secondary and higher education. Through strength and resilience and using our voices, we have the power to change and uplift the future.